Hello, I'm Ross Tayler, your host and guide for Sacred Sundays, a space to slow down, tune in, and return to what's sacred within and around you. I'm also a life coach for empaths and sensitive souls, walking alongside those who are ready to come home to who they actually are. These conversations are part of fulfilling that purpose, a collective exploration of what it means to live in connection with the sacred. Some weeks you'll hear a sound-based offering to open the space. Other times we'll simply begin in conversation. However it unfolds, this is an invitation into presence, connection, and the beauty of the unseen. If these conversations find you, please subscribe, rate, and share so others can find their way here. Pour a cup of tea, settle in, and let's begin. Today on Sacred Sundays, our guest is Jeff Thompson. Jeff is someone who has moved around a lot, physically and in every other sense too. And he isn't particularly attached to what his history might suggest about him. What Jeff is attached to is creativity beyond what's ever been imagined, collective expansion in the face of fear, and what might actually happen if we let love loose. That's Jeff's bio, and I think that tells you all you need to know. And I'll just add to that Jeff, I think I was trying to figure out when we met, but it's a little bit obscure because I think I first met you when I was working at Starbucks and you would come in for morning coffee. And so outside of that, I think maybe the end of 2015 is when I found myself working at the wellness center that you worked at as well. And then I've known you since then for sure. So welcome. Glad to have you for this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks for the intro and just your openness to chat about kind of whatever and where this leads us to. Because it's just, I don't know, I think it's playful to think of like just, when did we meet each other? When will we meet each other in the future? Just boundless history potential.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And in the context of our working together, you were the clinical director at the wellness center, and I started out as support staff, and I think I was there for about 6 years. And I have to say that the interactions I had with you and guided by you were hugely beneficial in guiding kind of the way that I work. And I think I quote you often in my work. There's things that you have said over the years that are so potent and helpful, so there are these Jeff quotables that I have continued to share, and I'm grateful for that experience and grateful for the depth of sensitivity that I developed in working with you and everyone else at that center.
That's kind and unexpected, but appreciated. I mean, the inner part is kind of giggling with the idea of like, I'm sure that I get attributed toward saying stuff that's great that I've never said. Welcome, because then I'll just say I inspired it in some fashion, and I'm sure like things get passed around. So kind of like we're talking of wherever that flow started. Sure, it didn't really start with me necessarily, but that whole vessel thing. I'm a big believer in like that idea of we don't really create art, we just allow it so that it kind of flows through us. Happy to be a conduit of useful things sometimes.
I appreciate that, and I agree that there's probably things that the origin isn't just us; it's a culmination of things. So either way, it's helpful wisdom, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. I have been playing with that idea that although we're all connected, we are all unique. So, if something was even flowing through whatever artist, so say, mentor of mine, Dorothy Satin, psychodramatist, something may come and, how she held herself. And so a position that I might have gesture-wise is not necessarily hers, but like, touched with all our uniqueness and the way you might see that or convey it, that everybody like has kind of a brush on the painting.
Like we all co-create it for sure.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. And so, Jeff, you had shared a quote that I think some of us may have heard before and some of us maybe haven't. And maybe as a conversation starter or something to reflect on together. And the quote is a quote by Rumi, and it goes like this: "Out beyond ideas of wrongdoing and right doing, there is a field. I'll meet you there." And I'm curious, perhaps, what was it that made you pull on that quote or bring it into the conversation? And what is alive for you when you hear it read to you?
Well, yeah, I'm trying to think, like, it's on my wall, and I'm wondering, like, maybe I got it as a card or something, or maybe I saw it as a card and got it. I don't really remember. But see, that's one I can't claim for myself. So that is Rumi. Although maybe it was me in the passage of time, and then Rumi got it from me, and then it's coming back. And I just don't
Hmm.
remember it from past lives. So um, I guess I think what comes to mind at this moment was somebody I knew expressed some concern about judgment, or and then I think the phrase just typified where I think, like, I'm just not invested in judging somebody else.
Hmm.
And then, I can play with it and think, okay, is that just really about healthy boundaries? That idea of, like, sure, I can have a position, like, not really thinking people need to die for there to be peace, and that's a position that somebody might go, yes, they do. And I guess rather than never talk to that person or never join the same field, I think more can be had with meeting them at least in the field.
Yeah, yeah. It's making me think of the idea of acceptance and, that universal love. And it makes me reflect on my time working at a treatment center in the Okanagan, which was, I guess, people who have had a lot more struggle with their addictions than I had been used to, and had done what you might refer to as horrific things in their experience of addiction. And I could always see beyond that and see their heart and see their goodness that was not, that wasn't, that was hidden by the addiction, or, kind of taken over. But I could always see beyond, without judgment, that these were good people despite these actions that they were feeling so much guilt and shame about. And so it reminds me of that. It's like, I'll meet you there for that conversation.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just really nice to hear you say that, because I think the more folks that have that kind of belief or experience that there's at the core, like, such radiant goodness. And
Hmm.
that doesn't mean that it can't be enveloped by a lot of crap and heinous activities.
Hmm.
But I think the more that we feel stalwart in that conviction, then I think there's more chance of that um, coming through and being, I think letting that love loose, like, not
Hmm.
having it being protected by such, yeah, crappy behavior or what have you. So yeah, and I do like, if we go that bar of, like just thinking the universe, and say if there's an appetite in the universe to expand, then it has to be free to be creative.
Hmm.
I'm just playing with these ideas, and with that freedom comes variety,
Hmm.
and for lack of a better word, failure,
Hmm.
uh, because if things are just cookie cutter, if it's just repetitious, then there's not going to be the diversity necessary for optimal health, let's say, like, even
Hmm.
as a human being, complexity and
Hmm.
integration. So
Yeah.
in that complexity stage, then I think things can go awry. And that's my hope, is that just with the belief and the spreading belief of, like, to expand further versus contract in the face of challenges. So yeah, let's if we go back to the war thing, or let's say, like, homicidal kind of efforts or activity or thoughts. I think there's way more chance with like limitless expansion of love
Hmm.
that can bring that I don't know, someplace different.
Hmm. A few years back, I had a psilocybin journey, and I was kind of shown something like what you were describing. I mean, I find these visions to be hard to describe at times, but the essence of it was I met some sort of being and I was shown the polarity of everything. And the bottom line was that it creates a beautiful problem. It's like there's these beautiful problems that we have in our life that are unfolding, and we don't always get to understand both sides of it, but once we do, we can see like the growth that came from that and the expansion that came from that. And so if it wasn't for the one side, the other side wouldn't be possible. And I think about what I would call my darkest moment, and that was the catalyst for so much growth. It was a catalyst for, I won't ever do that again. And it created this awareness of the trajectory I wanted to go on. And so we can easily judge one side of that polarity, but growth can come from that. Learning can come from it. Love can come from it. And it's hard to maybe see that when we're in it.
Totally. I like this conversation because you mentioned, yeah, the unfolding, or I felt like you said the word unfolding. And to me, I think that is key in the face of like maybe an appetite or an impulse to contract for safety, of
Hmm.
how do we potentially allow more vulnerability or unfolding. So like you say, then there is a bigger picture.
Hmm.
That said, like where I think challenges for me can be thinking of somebody's sexually assaulted, you know,
Hmm.
and I don't feel like, oh, that's part of a bigger picture, like a
Hmm.
beautiful picture. But do I believe in the face of such catastrophe, do they have options like, or like maybe less inflammatory, like I cross the street, I get hit by a car, I can never walk the same way again.
Hmm.
Do I wish that car never hit me? You know,
Hmm.
can I have both? Can I wish the car never hit me and really glad with how I responded to that
Hmm.
calamity, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's just I guess that goes back to everybody's individual experience. So yeah, I guess maybe that's my out.
Hmm.
For me, I can point to things that are challenging or have been challenging, and I've gotten things from them,
Hmm.
uh, and I'm in
Yeah.
a better place. Do I think I could even be in a better place if those things didn't happen? I don't know. Like,
Hmm.
but I'm committed to the unfolding or expansion.
Hmm. Yes, and I'm grateful for you kind of pointing towards the complexities of what I was pointing to, because there are complexities and there are levels of that. I think directing it back to my individual experience versus trying to assess the experience or outcome for someone else. Yeah, that's complicated. So I appreciate you shining the light on that part.
Yeah, it's just really interesting because maybe in a again the psychedelic experience, then you can see from that perception how other lives are going to get better, or that's just a little tiny part of their existence in the realm of time and the roles that they play.
Hmm.
But again, that's one perception.
Exactly. And this thread that we've gone on reminds me a little bit of psychodrama in a sense. Like I've had the blessing of sitting and witnessing many of the psychodramas that occurred at the center, and you're facilitating of those, and we haven't really mentioned it yet, but you're a psychodramatist and also a trainer of that as well. And it makes me think about the higher aspects of what's playing out in those dramatizations of our past experiences, and how it seems to transcend time and space and has an impact outside of the experience. And I'm just curious what you would want to say about that in the context of what we were just talking about in terms of these experiences and what you've witnessed in that realm.
Yeah, it's neat how you link those realms because I feel like that's accurate in when somebody's a protagonist or in a psychodrama in a role. Often people describe the experience as very like they go somewhere else,
Hmm.
in a different realm. Like the person who played their dead Italian grandmother, they saw them as their Italian grandmother,
Hmm.
and really, so I think it's really cool because it suggests that we have within us that capability of letting go and going places we never thought possible, and without actually um, imbibing a hallucinogenic, in that we
Hmm.
have all that stuff kind of within us. It's just a lot easier sometimes with a psychedelic and
Right.
faster. And I think you've heard that too. Accomplished like meditators, maybe Tibetan folks do a psychedelic thing and go, um, I was able to meet, all my previous trainers in previous lives or whatever. Yeah, it was just a little more efficient than meditation. So it's no place they haven't gone before.
Right.
And so I do think, like, I'd say, like ideal psychodramas, yeah, people are in a different, state, different realm, can go anywhere. And if they follow their inclination, they really know what they need. So that
Hmm.
inner healing intelligence comes forth. And maybe that gets us back to figuring out how do we deal with personal strife and how do we see somebody else deal with their strife of, and whether it's a cop out or not, but I believe in it, that inner healing intelligence, just like you said, that like gem inside everybody, we all have that too. Like,
Hmm.
like if people are with their heartedness and allow themselves to go, what do I need? I think there's great power in that.
Hmm. And often these areas of strife that we're trying to resolve are about unmet needs, incomplete situations. And so these things get resolved through these dramatizations, which is super powerful. We get the end result that we didn't get, and our body gets to have that experience and metabolize that. And that is what creates the potential catalyst for change. And I agree with what you're saying about this innate intelligence that exists within us that is wanting to always, in some ways, return back to its natural state or return back to a state of wholeness, whatever you want to call it.
And then I think, some of the challenges, how do we like live there versus just a place we visited? So
Right.
say somebody, role reverses with their cancer and they have a different relationship with it. And um, somehow, let's say in this, imagined psychodrama, they come to a space where, oh, they have an opportunity to love deeper than they ever have before. And that's their commitment, and they have all this, you know, um, for lack of a better term, play acting or, you know, um, where they're able to open their heart to their abusive parents, and all this. So then how do people retain that when they, versus like, ooh, those neural pathways lit up. That's one way of being,
Hmm.
but then they go back to a working atmosphere that's kind of toxic and the same defense patterns, or the same fears come up. So that's where I guess psychedelics may offer that you can measure the neuroplasticity
Mm.
and the window for new habits to take place. Um, and maybe we just haven't done that in psychodrama, like the idea of like, is it the same thing about the penchant, the necessity for integration? Like, how do you hold on to that? How do you have body things to ensure that it's the lasting change that you want.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, I mean, I think people can change in all different ways, and whether it's like in a dream or like a forest walk or psychedelics or um, another sentient being through healthy attachment changes.
Hmm. There's so many ways to get to the same destination, and at the bottom of it is really the intelligence of our body trying to do what it needs to do and get us back to something. So in some ways, the body always knows what it needs. It's our mind that gets in the way of that. And maybe that's what gets in the way of integration as well, is like believing that we have the time, or trusting that integration can happen, or just giving it intention. There's so many ways to get to the same end result. And I do believe, like, we're living in a world that is moving so quickly, and we want results so quickly, and we go and have these experiences, whatever they are, and we don't have time to pause, perhaps, to allow that integration to take place. And we have to go back to work on Monday. And so there's all sorts of layers to that, but maybe even that's perfect.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like that you're saying the body and the journey, like the body's wisdom. And maybe that's what I do like about psychodrama is it really invites the full body wisdom of like,
Hmm.
if like we could put that invisible line down and if like at one end is like, oh, I feel complete. I feel like I'm on my path. I'm really like on my path. And we just saw it as a multi-lane highway of like how far does your body say you're from the path? you know
Hmm.
and as soon as we move our body, like it's going to tell us like maybe we're like 7 lanes over, way
Hmm.
back. It's like this road doesn't fit at all. It's a journey
Hmm.
that's constantly changing, but I like yeah, inviting the body wisdom. And just if I can turn the conversation, like just to
Hmm.
play, to explore, because we're talking about the real life problems, and we look at, okay, inner healing intelligence and what do I need, and then every time I go in the downtown east side and I go into Watari and work with counselors there, I generally have to walk over people in various states of active addiction, and all super nice. You can see like the just overwhelming power of heartfulness in these folks, but they're suffering. So I'm stepping up the steps saying, excuse me, you just got to get in here, and everybody's really kind. So if I go, how do we support, someone there to look at what do they, what do you need? And if we role reverse with those folks, I'm gonna guess, it would be like the next high, maybe food, maybe some warmth, but also like, and I'm just following this through experience. So many times it is about relationships, and so many
Hmm.
times people know, like it's ridiculous. People know exactly like what they need to heal from, at least in this realm.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, and that's one thing out of psychodrama is like so often if people are safe enough, like it's not it is traumatic experiences, that
Hmm.
they are like inviting some help in how to respond to that traumatic experience.
Hmm. And maybe it's important to take a little step back, because we've been talking about psychodrama without really talking about what it is. And maybe you could give like a quick sentence or two about, or more, of what is psychodrama, just for the listener to really fully understand that and picture it.
Sure. I mean, if people were to see it, they would say, "Oh, that's a blend of therapy and theater." So
Hmm.
that is basically it's enacting anything, like
Hmm.
exploring things through the body and through a group. So there's always like lots of warm up so people feel safe and playful. So then way more chance new ways of being can be explored because people bodies know that they're safe to explore that and not get judged. And then it is. So if it's like, if even in a psychodrama, if we were to explore, like, I need to go to the beginning of the universe,
Hmm.
like, and because that's where I'm going to find my answer to live the fullest life, to be the happiest that I could be. Then, the director might say, okay, well, do you want to set that up at the beginning of the universe? Do you want actors to play that? And mm, might point to two different spots, and then my body might say, yeah, actors, I want you to be cell A and you to be cell B, kind of thing. And way over there, actually beyond those doors, because it's going to take me a while to get there. Oh, but let's say I have a jet plane. So, and you just go and you explore. And what do
Hmm.
A and B say to you? Well, this is as far as you get to go today, but we'll talk to you. We're representatives, and you just explore what feels nourishing to explore.
Hmm.
So yeah, nothing's out of let's say the realm of possibility besides our
Hmm.
creativity, I guess.
Yeah, I love that. And all things relational, all experiences. People can play the different roles of a family dynamic or a partnership where a conversation didn't get to happen, all those kind of things.
Yeah. And one of my favorite lead-ins is just to express something to somebody you never had a chance to,
Hmm.
or you haven't yet, or it wouldn't be safe to. And it's not a rehearsal. It's just to be and explore safely with your own truth of what you
Hmm.
need and with, witnesses. And if it's synergistic and there's been good group building, I'll say, then maybe in the debriefing, the sharing afterwards about how that touched folks in the
Hmm.
room, the drama might have been more about somebody who played a role, or they might say that they got more out of it than they
Hmm.
ever expected.
Yeah.
So, the person playing Cell A at the beginning of the universe
Hmm.
might say, I just felt like I was in a womb and it was like so neat. And I realized that even though, my mom said I wasn't wanted, something beyond that told me I was wanted,
Hmm. Yeah.
which might be super healing for them. And little did they know it was going to come from a role of being cell A of the universe.
Hmm. I remember witnessing a time where the person was sitting in the chair and the opportunity to hear the things they didn't get to hear. And there were, I think, maybe one or two people playing the role of reflecting those things that needed to be said. And so the body getting to feel that experience of hearing those things that in a perfect world they would have been able to hear, and the body getting to take those things in. I mean, it's so, in some ways it seems so simple, yet it's so powerful because those were those missing experiences that didn't get to happen back in the day.
It is remarkable, and I can see why, like Bessel van der Kolk, I'd say, dabbles in psychodrama, even though he does say that it's his number one healing modality for trauma. I've heard
Mm,
him say that a couple times now, thank goodness. But his template, he likes to go with a template of like looking at what needs were not met growing up,
mhm, yeah,
and getting those needs met in like surplus reality, like you said. And it's extremely, extremely healing potentially. And it's good that he doesn't stop there either. He does like once that's actually been met, then the recognition of like what your parents' needs were not met. And even if you've never met your parents, you can still like
mhm,
explore all of that, I think. And just so one, having compassion, but also then the potentiality of getting to hear what you need, or the touch or the experience that you didn't get
mhm,
from a healed parent.
yeah, right,
Yeah. And so, and you could go on ad nauseum because the loop effect, back to
mhm,
cell A and cell B, but maybe cell C was there too. But yeah, I think it is really amazing to me of like the capacity to heal through that structure is almost like there's a template within us that's able to heal,
mhm,
that almost like a puzzle piece, like it's missing, and then it knows exactly where that's to go and insert it and soothe. So,
mhm,
um, and I do think it's really interesting of those words of "I'm sorry."
mm.
can be ridiculously powerful, and ones that are so hard to say, from perpetrators to themselves to the, let's say, victim, but that have such powerful healing for all agents involved,
Hmm.
of acknowledging.
Yeah. It's interesting because I've been involved in men's work for 12 years. And what I've witnessed at times is that there's processes that emerge in these circles, and they emerge so organically. The processes that you're talking about that occur in psychodrama, it's like they kind of surface on their own. Like I've witnessed opportunities where men are like, "Oh, I think you just need to hear something from your mom, and maybe someone can play your mom." Like there's also this intelligence that is driving these possibilities as well. As a matter of fact, recently I was the participant, I was the center of the process, and the men all just came around and intuitively just held and supported my back, and just I could lean into that. And
Yeah.
I was just blown away. Like I didn't ask for that. I didn't even articulate it that clearly. And yet, there's 6 or 7 men behind me just organically stepping into this way of being, and there's an intelligence guiding it. So
Mm.
it's not to minimize what you do, but it's
No, no,
both
yeah,
things are happening at the same
yeah.
time,
I
right?
so appreciate that, because, yeah, long before Moreno coined the phrase group psychotherapy, people were healing each other, and
Mm.
maybe it gets back to that, like, whatever we need to do to let love loose,
Mhm.
then it knows what to do.
Right.
And it's like people toy around with all that word, but yeah, it's in that isolation, or that that there's so much suffering.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, with that kind of healthy community and support of one another, like, so much is possible.
Mhm. And you referenced the let love loose, so it's a perfect opportunity to loop back to what we shared at the beginning in your bio. If you play that out a bit, what does it look like when we let love loose?
That's the thing. Who knows? Like if we really let love loose, like, would we all turn to light? I don't know. Like, that's, like, because then we go home. Like, I'm just playing, if we really, really, like, kept on letting go of defenses, and there was enough of us doing that, is there enough energy, for us to experience existence in a way that we never have before?
Mhm.
And scary as hell, potentially, but maybe good. I can feel it in my body. And if I feel like, if I'm able to expand in the appetite of contraction, good things happen.
Mhm.
So yeah, say if somebody knocks at my door during this, how is it different if I slow that down? Say it was in a psychodrama, because I would probably benefit from that. How do I, like, come back to such a heartful place and move to that door in such a heartful place with compassion and loving that person with all my heart? How does that change potentially the interaction? Um, and I think that's the kind of the practice that I try and fail miserably on daily. But there are moments where it's less failure.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I like to think, that on some level we all want to do that. And you say, what would it look like if we all let our hearts loose? I think it's so hard to fathom, like,
Mhm.
what could happen because of all that energy and all that power. And that brings it back to, like, beyond our imagination of what's possible, and beyond collective imagination. So
Mhm.
each unique entity, I think, has an ability to spark something that, yeah, is phenomenal. That's that's just my well, yeah, belief. And I think if we hold that belief, like anything's possible, then way more chance it is. Do I think that all pain and suffering could go away and be in a delightful, amazing existence? And I think so. I just don't know how.
Right.
But
And I love what you said because there's times when I can absolutely be in that place of love. And then there's other situations where I can't seem to access it. And in hindsight, I was like, oh, if I'd only done this. And it's good that we have awareness. And yet we're human. We're having that human experience too. And we can't always anticipate everything. And our body might be having a reaction to something that we're not realizing what it's connecting to. So there's so many layers to that. But I love the idea of what happens when we let love loose. And perhaps that's the segue to looking at the other side of what you shared as well, which is what happens to, this idea of collective expansion in the face of fear. It's like there's a lot of that going on in the world right now. We're seeing a lot of fear paradigms playing out. And how do we expand as a result of that?
yeah, because why not? Why not talk about how we solve the world's problems? And all of that. Um, and I do think it is by hearkening, that the power of our heartfulness and the um, so I think I heard this morning CBC talk about Netanyahu and him talk about how in scriptures that godliness doesn't win. You might have to have might, and history shows that dominance and didn't say evil, but can triumph. And I think um, he's recanted or said he wouldn't like kind of say that again. But let's say if people feel that, and um, saying, well, there just has to be murder, and all the righteous wars that we're hearing about. Maybe that takes us back to the Rumi quote of like, well, let's meet in a field. What would happen if Trump and Vance were surrounded by community committed to seeing the heartfulness in those folks, buried deep perhaps, or maybe it's closer to the surface than
Hmm.
imagine, but looking for that and looking for ways, how do we support the best in these people? And I don't know, I like to believe that amazing things could, yeah, still come. So how do we solve all that? I think way more chance by love. and I do think like we're really moved by kindness. So I'm just playing with that idea. If we, sure, we don't neglect all the pain and suffering, but we also do take in, the incredible caring and selflessness and all the power that love does, um, yeah, create.
It's definitely a medicine that can do so much that we can't anticipate, so much that transcends ways of being. And it goes back to many things we've said about what happens when we look at it from that different perspective or say the thing we don't usually say. It has an impact. And so there is, even in the things that we're facing in our world right now, there's the potential for different outcomes. All it takes is one person to say, this isn't the highest path, or whatever that might look like. And all of a sudden, we're on a different trajectory.
Like that idea of like those folks coming to your back, so to speak, if we look at that in a wider thing of like who's hurting and how do we support them? And
Mm-hmm.
because our bodies know, like you said, to move toward folks that are
Mm-hmm.
hurting. That doesn't mean like somebody's lashing out, you still stay an arm's distance, but promoting them to feel safe enough so when they allow themselves to be vulnerable, to then have that vulnerability with support. Because I think maybe that's the healingness of like, when somebody's vulnerable and supported, it can be kind of life changing. Well, some folks there are they so much in barbed wire that they won't let themselves be vulnerable? Well, maybe it's just how do we model vulnerability so that they know that that's an option and a
Mm-hmm.
desired option? No, I guess it's like maybe it's just like a continuing problem, not one solution, but to believe that there are got to be solutions.
Mm-hmm. And it's making me think of something I heard, I think it was last week. I was listening to someone speak about a body of work that I am part of. And this original practitioner, you could say, made the comment that, oh, whenever I'm talking to a client, I always pretend that I'm talking to their 7-year-old self because that's where the conditioning began. That's where the original trauma likely was. And so if I remember that, oh, I'm speaking to their 7-year-old part that's kind of stuck there, then it helps me to speak to them the right way and just remember even that that's what's playing out right now. It's that 7-year-old hurt self. And obviously, 7 is a very precise number, but generally we have experiences around that time. And so I thought that was an interesting perspective. And it's not to talk down to someone, it's just to recognize that's who I'm talking to right now.
Mhm. Yeah, that's kind of cool, I think, just to imagine like, like that it's all parts. You could say parts of yourselves, and long before IFS, people thought of there's parts to ourselves, I think.
Hmm.
And whether it's parts or like that a younger part is there and just to play with it, or is it like, yeah, you know, past lives that you were also
Hmm.
speaking to? Is there energy from, again, if there was such a thing as the beginning of the universe, that's part there too? And yeah, to have welcomeness and reverence for all those parts, I think it's more chance that all those parts then can be welcomed and have more chance of them having self-reverence as well.
Hmm.
Or, but I really do like that vision of that childlike kind of innocence that I think we all retain,
Hmm.
and much can be done, I think, if we allow that part to surface.
Hmm. And children are inherently brilliant. The
Hmm.
perspectives they hold, there is a true wisdom there that I've witnessed.
Yeah, and so like thinking of you as a 7-year old, if you know if that a 7-year-old was in the room on the couch behind you, you know, um, yeah, I think they would be clapping if they were
Mm.
watching you. But or or shooting something at your ear. I'm not sure, but what I mean, if you're open to going there,
Hmm.
what would your like if we like role reversed with your 7-year-old right
Hmm.
now and said just what's one thing that you maybe what's one compliment that you want to offer Ross, the adult Ross of today?
Hmm.
What might that 7-year-old offer to you as a compliment?
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, first off, it brings up emotions, and the words that come are, I'm proud of who you've become. I'm proud of all the things you've accomplished. I love the things that you're doing because from this perspective, I couldn't have imagined those things.
Yeah, because and when I play at role reversing and not even physical things, that's kind of what I was getting was like thanks for not giving up, thanks for being
Hmm.
so goddamn strong, you know.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. It was unexpected. And of course, I needed to hear that today.
So happy to share, and thanks for your playfulness and openness and ability to be vulnerable. And that's exactly, I think, what we're talking about. Can we be vulnerable and let go of guarding so much as possible, letting
Mm-hmm.
love loose, of safety with other sentient beings and all.
Maybe as the last little tangent we can go on before we end our conversation is this idea of creativity beyond what's ever imagined. What would you say about that? Because it feels like an important piece that, I mean, I'm going through them in reverse order as the way I read them, but creativity is probably the byproduct of all of these things that we've been talking about. Or maybe it is the source of it, the essence of it.
Yeah, I think yeah, so much is possible with with collective intelligence, I think, and
Mm,
each playing a unique part. I remember a psychedelic intention of mine was kind of offering myself as being keen to go beyond what is possible, like beyond possibility. Because I'm thinking like there just has to be like something more than pain and suffering, and who's to say that any of us can't create that? So beyond, oh no, one human can't do that. So, like, we're just thinking, what if we let go of that?
mhm,
That we can think of all the rationalizations of that's not possible. But what if it was beyond possibility and to act in ways that we never imagined not possible? And on this, say, it's one of those psychedelic intentions. Be careful what you ask for. But as some part of it, I ended up in this role of the creator, and
mm,
I don't know if I shared this with you before, and then felt like, oh, like just this horrible weight of like failing people,
mm,
that all this pain and suffering, and in this role that I knew I was taking, but really in it as well, of failed, and then through, I'll just kind of cut to the chase, but through a lot of, let's say, challenges in the psychedelic experience, it came clear to me, at least in that perception, that that this was a pact with humanity, that
mhm,
there was that humanity wanted choice, freedom, and power,
mm,
and the only way to do that was to let go of being able to heal everything for everybody. And then I saw like people go through incredible pain in their journeys and thinking like this is like an example of choice. People are choosing to have this psychedelic experience. They don't want it to be interrupted. They're finding something in their little psychedelic experience. So then thinking of humanity as a whole, are we and trusting that we're finding something through this, through all this pain and suffering, collective and individual, just trusting that propels to greater healing.
mhm.
So yeah, so that beyond possibility, I think that's possible.
I really appreciate that perspective, and I think it is important to hold on to that at times and to imagine that these limitations that we put in front of us, they may not be real, and a lot of the times they aren't because they're created by our mind. So thank you for all of this conversation. I always like to close with the same question, so I'll offer that question to you. And the question is, what's one simple way someone could connect with the sacred today?
Yeah, I think that's them asking themselves, how do I
Mm,
connect with the sacred? So for somebody who might be touching their nose and they're like in bewitched character, somebody else might be, a dance that where they expand beyond their body. Um, yeah, somebody else might be, letting their dog lick their face. I like that idea of just asking self, how do I, connect with
Mhm.
the sacred?
Brilliant.
Yeah, I appreciate your generosity.
Thank you so much for this conversation. And I love all the places that we went, and it was good, really great and nourishing to connect with you in this way and to have this touch point. And luckily I got to see you in person. I think was it last week? Time.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah. Look forward to more of all that with you.
yeah. So thank you so much for being a part of this conversation.
And thanks for continuing to listen to yourself.
You are very welcome. Thank you for joining us on Sacred Sundays. I hope something in today's offering spoke to your spirit, stirred something true, or simply gave you a moment to breathe. If this conversation resonated, please subscribe, rate, or share. It truly helps this work reach the people who are meant to find it. If you'd like to step inside my world a little further, I host a free live practice 3 mornings a week called Start With You. Just 20 minutes on Zoom to return to your own energy. Everything you need can be found at the link in the show notes. Until next time, may your day be slow and sacred.